Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Elko, the Texas A&M Aggies continue to stay aggressive in the transfer portal, landing the commitment from former Pitt linebacker Solomon DeShields. And I'll start with this. And I think this is a phenomenal fit and a phenomenal get for Texas A&M. Solomon DeShields, not necessarily going to be a top 100 pick in the NFL draft, but you look at that Texas A&M linebacker room and say, hey, we got a lot of young talent that we feel really good about. We want to bring in a linebacker that is kind of just a proven commodity at the Power 5 level. I think they tried to do that with Alex Howard from Youngstown State in the winter months. Obviously, that didn't work out. I think the difference between Solomon DeShields and Alex Howard is you kind of know that Solomon DeShields is a very solid linebacker at the Power 5 level. And you kind of look at how that Texas A&M linebacker room is shaken out. You know you have a stud in Torian York. You brought in a guy in Scooby Williams who I think has a ton of upside, but hasn't necessarily played great football at that linebacker spot. You get a guy in Solomon DeShields coming in who's a very reliable linebacker that was very solid at Pitt in 2023. I think this is a really good fit, and I am a massive fan of what Mike Elko is doing in the transfer portal during this spring portal window, where it's a very calculated approach. We're not going to go out and grab 15 more players in the transfer portal. We got a solid roster. We're looking at this roster coming out of spring practice and say, hey, what positions do we need to add to heading into 2024? We kind of identified an experienced linebacker at the Power 5 level was one of those spots. They go out and get it done with Solomon DeShields. Want to dive into what he brings to this Texas A&M defense. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out to the Texas A&M fans. Y'all know I had a blast talking this program in the winter months in the transfer portal. It's going to be a fun next couple of weeks. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. If y'all do enjoy the content and you enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Solomon DeShields. And I think the first thing you talk about is the experience. This was a guy that started all 11 games that he was healthy for during his season at Pitt in 2023, and a guy that gets downhill, right? 58 tackles, 8 tackles for loss. That was second on the team at Pitt. And you kind of look at this Texas A&M defensive line, and we came away from that spring game saying that is going to be an elite unit in 2024. What do you want to complement a really good defensive line? You want linebackers that can play downhill. I always think back to that Georgia defense where they had a really good defensive line. Then they had guys like Channing Tindall and Nakobe Dean at that linebacker spot, linebackers that want to get downhill. And they're going to have the opportunity to get downhill, play clean, because Texas A&M's defensive line is going to dominate at the point of attack. And you look at Solomon DeShields and some of the things that I really like. One, you can kind of move him around the defense. You turn on the film with Solomon DeShields, he's coming off the edge. He's playing the overhang linebacker spot. He's a rangy linebacker that, although a little undersized, can play in space, can go sideline to sideline. An 8% missed tackle rate, extremely low for an off-ball linebacker. And he's a guy that can get involved in the pass rush too. You think back to Edgerrin Cooper last year and how elite of a pass rusher that he was. Solomon DeShields, 11 hurries, a 9% pass rush win rate. This is a chess piece at the linebacker spot that you can ask to do a lot of different things, move him around that front seven. I think, one, the versatility, two, the experience that he brings to that Texas A&M linebacker room, and more importantly, the proven production. At the Power 5 level, we know we have some massive upside guys in that Texas A&M linebacker room. I'd say Scooby Williams, arguably the highest upside that Texas A&M has. What you wanted them to add was a proven commodity at the linebacker spot. I think that's exactly what Solomon DeShields brings to the table for Texas A&M. I'm a big fan of what this front seven looks like. And you take a look, dominant defensive line, right? Nick Skirton looks to be one of the best defensive linemen in all of college football. I think the question was, we know Torian York can be a phenomenal football player for it. We know he is a phenomenal football player for Texas A&M. Damian Sanford, you're hearing a lot of good things about. Scooby Williams, a guy that has that upside. You wanted a will linebacker that was a proven commodity. And I think Solomon DeShields is that guy. And you take a look at what Texas A&M has done in the portal over the last couple of days. They go out to Utah and land another guy that played some solid football, has starting experience on the inside of that Texas A&M offensive line. That was another position that we kind of identified was probably a need that Texas A&M wanted to address. I think Mike Elko checks the box with an experienced offensive lineman on the inside that has played at the Power 5 level. And I think one of the last positions that we were talking about was, maybe adding another wide receiver that, again, proven production at the Power 5 level. Now, I'll say this, Noah Thomas on Saturday afternoon, I think showed that he could really be that wide receiver one in that Texas A&M offense. A guy in Keandre Lambert-Smith, who was on campus for Texas A&M over the weekend, I think would be a really nice addition for a couple of reasons. One, going back to the proven production, that Texas A&M wide receiver room is extremely loaded with talent. We have no questions about the talent in that wide receiver room. I think some of the questions we have is, all right, who are your guys that are the proven commodities? You're bringing a guy potentially like Keandre Lambert-Smith. That's a proven commodity. A guy in Keandre Lambert-Smith, as a Big Ten fan myself, probably would be going to the NFL draft right now had he played in an offense where I think his skill set was a little bit more utilized. That Penn State passing attack, pretty much non-existent. Keandre Lambert-Smith can be an 1,000-yard pass catcher in the SEC. There is no doubt in my mind. You bring him in as that proven guy that can be used in the slot, can be used on the boundary. I think that one would make a lot of sense as well. We'll see how that one plays out. But I think the thing that I want to wrap up on is I'm a really big fan of how Mike Elko is going about building this roster, right? He's getting it done on the high school class, and he's using the transfer portal in the second window to really address the concerns that you have heading into 2024. And he's addressing it with guys that are proven commodities at the Power 5 level, not necessarily betting on the upside. We're getting guys that we know can come in and play some really good football. I think Solomon DeShields certainly fits that bill for Texas A&M. Fired up about this one for Texas A&M. We'll continue to keep you guys updated as Texas A&M continues to do work in the portal. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.